Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this meeting?
Yes, we do have regrets from Councillor Sandu tonight.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That means we have a quorum. And I would now invite the public and council to join in O Canada. Thank you, everyone. In 1820, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, the new community was helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their Treaty 22 rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity. And in 1857, Ontario gave official recognition of Oakville as a town. At Town Hall, all of these years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability that we have created. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story, so everyone knows what we are part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance and violence suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for everyone. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us on council know of any chance to be helpful to you and yours. Please let us know anytime you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Madam Clerk, let's see, Council, it's time to ask if any of you have a declaration of pecuniary interest. And Madam Clerk, I'm not seeing any online or in real life. Council, it would be in order for a motion and a second to confirm the minutes of the previous council meetings as presented or to issue corrections. I'll take a motion from Councillor Longo and a second from Councillor Dudek. Thank you. And there being no corrections, I'll look to see if there's any objection to the motion. There being none, the motion carries. Council, it would now be in order to have a mover and seconder to resolve into committee of the whole. Councillor Lischina and Councillor Elger, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the motion carries, and we are now in the relaxed rule structure of committee of the whole. Council, we have 5 consent items on tonight's agenda, and I wonder how you would like to dispose of them. A motion to pass them would be in order. Councillor Chisholm? Thank you.
Your Worship, as part of the motion, can I separate 7.4 and 7.7.5? I have a couple of questions.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
So I have a motion from you for the first four, thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, the first four consent items are adopted. We're at 7.5. Councillor Chisholm, you have the floor.
Your worship, just for correction, 7.4 is first and then 7.5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead then.
Okay. Just a quick question of staff with respect to the 50% reduced fee for the training program, the fitness instructor certification. Is there a qualification that once they receive that subsidy or a reduced rate that they're required under a memorandum of understanding that they have to perform their duties with the town at a certain amount of time? The reason I asked that question in history is that when we do these type of programs and then they get the qualifications and so forth, and they move on and they don't work for the municipality. And I just wanted to have an understanding if there was any requirement by staff, senior staff, with respect to that happening once they receive their subsidy, or excuse me, their reduced rate. They have to be employed within the town.
Councillor, I'm very sorry, but the technology here in council is not allowing everyone to hear you very well, and the technicians are working on it. Do we have are we better now? Councillor Chisholm, I'm going to look to the CAO and see if she could hear your question well enough. Otherwise, I might ask you to repeat it.
I think you might have Julie Mitchell online there. She could probably answer that question, Your Worship.
All right. I can tell you, Councillor Chisholm, that we can hear you much better now, so something good got done. Ms. Mitchell.
Through you, Mayor Burton. Councillor Chisholm, at this moment, we haven't set a minimum amount of hours that those individuals would work. If it's approved, we would certainly look to implement something like that for the part-time staff.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you, Julie. And Your Worship, 7.5, with respect to the lateral grant program, I'm trying to ascertain too, and help me out on this one. When we look at the laterals with respect to homeowners and the town, are laterals under driveways? If that's the case, we have a lot of confusion with residents when their driveways are torn up. They believe the apron of the driveway is responsibility of the town, and that's not true. So I just want qualification or some note in that policy that the driveway apron is responsibility of the homeowner and not the town. Because I know we've had this issue before, and there's nothing noted in the policy.
So through you, Mayor Burton, unless Commissioner Phoebe Fu would like to jump in, I can take that back to staff and ensure that's noted. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. So just for clarity, perhaps Councillor Chisholm, you should move 7.4 now, correct? As a favor to the rest of us? Because I think I mistakenly thought that you had already moved 7.4, but you'd separated it.
That's correct. Sorry. So for clarity, I'm moving 7.4 and 7.5.
Thank you. So you're now moving those and you'll receive that clarity. Thank you. Is there any objection to Councillor Chisholm's motion? There being none, Councillor Chisholm, your motion carries, and thank you everybody for that. Now we come to our 4 discussion items for this evening. And the first is always an occasion for celebration, because it's good to get a clean audit opinion. And as a matter of fact, I've lived here almost 30 years and I can't remember the town ever not getting a clean audit opinion, which I think says something about the professional quality of our staff. And if you'll give your attention now to Jade Surgener, the manager of accounting, she's going to introduce our auditors from KPMG. Ms. Surgener.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. I'm here tonight to speak to 2 items on the agenda, both 9.1 and 9.2. 9.1 is the receipt of the audit findings report from the town's external auditors, KPMG. And 9.2 is the motion to approve the 2021 consolidated financial statements for the town and for the trust. And these two agenda items really do go hand in hand. So with your approval, Mayor Burton, I would like to start with a few quick words on the financial statements, and then after answering any questions on those, introduce our auditors from KPMG to speak to their audit findings report. Perfect. So starting with the town's financial statement, so agenda item 9.2, the staff report highlights the drivers between significant variances year over year. So I won't go into the individual line item details, but I would like to provide a few overarching comments on the year-end financial statements. The first is that the town is required to prepare annual financial statements, which must be audited by an external company, so in our case, KPMG. These financial statements are consolidated, which means they contain the results of the town itself, the 3 local business improvement areas, the Oakville Public Library, Oakville Municipal Development Corporation, and Oakville Enterprises Corporation. And although consolidated in these statements, these individual entities all produce their own financial statements, which are also audited and have been or will be approved by their respective boards. Another item to note is that as a municipality, these consolidated financial statements are prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards. And so this is important to highlight as these standards differ from those used for budget purposes. In order to assist council and other users of the financial statements, Appendix C is prepared each year to show how the town's operating surplus, which council received in April, reconciles with the results included in the audited financial statements. The last item that I wanted to highlight is that KPMG is prepared to issue an unqualified audit report, so otherwise known as a clean audit report, for both the town and the trust. And in a few minutes, they'll walk us through the work that was done to reach that conclusion. But before introducing KPMG, I just wanted to see if there were any specific questions that on the town's financial statements or on the trust statements.
Well, Ms. Surgener, I don't see any questions, so you may want to go ahead.
Okay, so I'll pass things along to KPMG to present their audit findings report, which is item 9.1 on the agenda. And joining us today is Carlos Alvarez, the audit partner, and Matthew Cerdelli, the audit senior manager on the engagement.
Thank you, Jade, and through you, your worship. We are glad to be here this evening to present the audit findings for the 2021 fiscal year. I will note that management did provide and prepare a summary of the findings report, which is included on page 111 of your package. I can validate as an auditor that their summary of the audit findings report is correct and is accurate. So yes, indeed, it was a clean audit this year, and we'll go through some of the highlights contained in our audit findings report. I am joined by Matthew Cerdelli, senior manager in our audit group, and both of us will walk through the report. If we can just turn in a few slides to the executive summary. We'll have you note that we are certainly substantially complete in terms of the audit process. All of the items that are listed here on the slide are very customary in terms of what is outstanding as of today. I can validate that there were no corrected audit misstatements, nor were there any corrected audit misstatements. So again, that's a good reflection of the status of the books and records as provided to us at the onset of the audit. It is important to comment on control deficiencies. We do look at your major processes at the town, and we did not identify anything that would be considered a significant control deficiency, nor did we identify anything that would be a control matter to bring to your attention. It is very important for us as auditors to communicate on the topic of independence We do have a robust system of checks and balances to ensure that we are not offside on our independence rules. I can confirm that we remained independent throughout the entire audit process, and we have not provided any audit, tax, or advisory services that would threaten our independence. Moving along to the next slide. In terms of our audit approach and our scope, both of those would have been identical to the prior year being 2020. So there were no changes in terms of what entities we audited, nor were there changes in our audit approach. Moving along to the next slide. Just as a reminder, for every financial statement audit across Canada, our standards mandate that we respond to two specific risks. The first is the risk associated with fraudulent revenue recognition, and the second is the risk associated with management override of controls. I can conclude to all of you that all of the transactions that we examine as part of the audit were found to be consistent with the organization that you operate. There were no actual cases of fraud or anything that would have been determined to be suspicious. So there are no reportable findings based on the response to those two fraud risks. I'll turn it over to Matthew to go through the next few slides.
Great, thanks very much, Carlos. So we'll stay on this slide here, revenue recognition. Oh, one more. There we go, thank you very much. We'll stay here for just a few seconds. This is the first of the two fraud risks that Carlos referred to previously that must be considered in each audit that we perform under our professional standards in Canada. This risk relates to fraudulent revenue recognition. Now, unlike the risk of management override of controls, this is a risk that is rebuttable. In the case of the town and many other municipal audits, a bulk of the revenue does come from sources which are very straightforward and low complexity when it comes to designing an audit procedure to obtain the necessary assurance over those areas, in particular the tax levy in a municipal setting. For that reason, we have rebutted that presumed fraud risk consistent with the past. That said, we do spend quite a bit of time during the audit over the revenue areas, regardless of that rebuttal. That was also the case this year. Areas that we focus on outside of the tax levy would include developer contributions and other contributed assets to the town, as well as other sources of revenue, such as your investment portfolios or the like. Similar to Carlos's comment on the previous fraud risk, we have nothing to report in this area, and we obtained the audit evidence we needed over revenue without issue. I'll move on to the next slide, please. The next area we'll profile just in some detail is the post-employment benefit liability. Those who have heard our presentation on audit findings before may recall that this continues to be a material element of the financial statements and will continue to be so each year into the future. This is an area that requires some estimation because it is trying to value a future liability. Therefore, management must involve a third-party actuary that has certain expertise in this area in order to form that estimate. KPMG, as auditors, works with management to ensure that the data provided to that actuary was consistent with the underlying records of the employees in the HR department, and that they have been provided a reasonable base with which to design their report, which management then uses to create this estimate as it appears in your financial statements. Now, one thing that we will flag here is that every 3 years, a full evaluation is required, and the 2 years in between, the actuary will update that, changing assumptions as they deem necessary. KPMG has audited the assumptions that have gone in to that third-party actuary's report, and the estimate management has designed this year, and we have no issues to report. We will flag that in 2022, the current fiscal year, management will be working with their actuary to design a new report, a refreshed version of that, which will stand for fiscal 22 and the coming years. Moving on to the next slide, please. Now, another area we'll focus on just for a few words in our presentation here is tangible capital assets, your fixed assets, land, buildings, equipment, and the like, and the contaminated sites and asset retirement obligations that may be associated with some of those in the future. Happy to report that there are no adverse findings during our work over the tangible capital asset balance. We have audited the significant additions as well as disposals, the ins and the outs, so to speak, of the asset base for the year without issue. Something we do want to profile in our report is that the asset retirement obligation and contaminated sites accounting standards in the public sector will be changing for fiscal years beginning after April 1st, 2022. So that implies that this will take effect for the town's fiscal 2023 financial statements and fiscal year. Management is obviously well aware of this, and we've been working with them to keep track of their progress, as there is quite a bit of work that does go in with keeping up with this accounting standard change. That said, still quite a bit of runway, and we know that there are many people that will be involved at the town, not just the financial reporting group, but also some of the asset management group and others. So that work is certainly in progress, and we've offered to assist management should they require any guidance along the way. So something a couple years out, but that we did want to flag as it is a significant change for those reporting in the public sector over the next couple of years.
And maybe, Matthew, just to add, this is the most significant accounting standard change since tangible capital assets was first introduced. So the complexities around this accounting standard is that it cannot only be done and completed by your finance staff. They will need to communicate and work with individuals from operations, facilities management, engineering, and in certain cases may need to engage outside consultants to assist with the estimation involved in asset retirement obligations, not only on your non-productive assets, but those that exist on your productive assets, including any assets that are contained within a lease. So we just want to stress that it's not something that your accounting folks can do on their own, and certainly it will take quite a bit of resources to get through the process. Back over to you, Matthew.
Thanks, Carlos. We'll go to the next slide, please. The last area of what I'll call the meat and potatoes of the audit that we wanted to profile here is accounts payable, accrued liabilities, and operating expenditures as a whole. So certainly in any audit in this setting, we do spend quite a bit of time and energy to audit this portion. Some of the procedures that we will highlight touch on the concept of cutoff, which essentially is to ensure that expenses that pertain to fiscal 2021 are captured in fiscal 2021, regardless of the timing of invoicing or other requests for payment from third parties that those expenses may be owing towards. So we have designed specific procedures to address that. And again, as we have a clean audit, we had no material differences to bring to your attention today. I won't spend too much time on this beyond that. We will go to the next slide, please. And I don't think we need to spend too much time here either, as Carlos and I have already mentioned. Certainly the asset retirement obligation standard is the most significant upcoming change. There have not been any changes relevant specifically to fiscal 2021. There have not been any auditing standard changes, and the town and the management team have not made any new selections or policy choices to bring to your attention. Moving on, please. One item I will highlight that you may see if you were to page flip the financial statements for 2021 alongside that from the prior year. Management has changed the presentation on the segmented information note disclosure, which is a required note disclosure in the financial statements and has been for as long as the standards have been in existence. No information has been changed. It's simply the method of presenting it. This note essentially takes what is presented on the face of your financial statements and breaks it down into additional detail based on certain groupings, committees, or departments, for instance. Certain municipalities have the right to make different choices here, and management has made a presentational choice which allows this note to better align with other reporting requirements which follow a different format. So our comment here is that this was a change that brought better usability to this note disclosure for the readers of the financial statements.
And Matthew, I will take the remaining few slides. We are almost through the formal parts of the presentation. Just flipping to the next slide. Obviously, it's a clean sheet, as we further alluded to. I will highlight that we received the full cooperation from the management team. We did conduct the audit virtually, consistent with the prior year. But even with working virtually, we still obtained all of the required documentation that one would expect external auditors to accumulate as part of an audit file. So we're fully satisfied that we've met all of the underlying Canadian auditing standards. We were not planning on going through each and every page after the page that you see on screen, but there is a page 142 in your package that just highlights the topic of cybersecurity, which I would have commented on briefly in our presentation last year. Not a week goes by where we don't hear of a new cyber incident, whether it pertains to a municipality or a town or another organization. We have offered to management to hold a session to members of management and any others that would be interested in terms of just sharing our insights in terms of best practices, what we're seeing in terms of organizations defending against these risks. As a reminder, it's never about eliminating the risk. It's all about reducing the risk to an acceptable level. The topic of cyber is not something that we would have addressed as part of a financial statement audit, but certainly we are available at your disposal to assist where necessary. So I just wanted to highlight that is one of those three topics that is receiving increasing attention in every single council meeting, audit committee, or board meeting. And so with that, I will pause. I would say that Matthew and I covered what we would call the formal topics that we are required to bring forward to your attention.
Thank you very much. I wonder if, for the benefit of the public, you could speak for a moment on where accounting standards come from and what kind of faith and credit is assured by those, and just in general, why the economy has and values external independent auditors.
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship. Within Canada, there are various accounting frameworks that different types of organizations follow. For those that are publicly listed organizations on a stock exchange, they would follow what's called International Financial Accounting Standards. For organizations like yourself in the municipal world, they would all follow what's called Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards. And there is a body that is formed here in Canada, and this body is responsible for evolving those standards over time to address the needs of the users of your financial statements. So case in point, the new asset retirement standard that we've spent quite a bit of time highlighting, that is again, through the work of this board in terms of communicating with various stakeholders, and collectively they've determined that that new standard would benefit the users of your financial statements. So that's just one example of how accounting standards come to light and how they unfold. And in terms of the value in an external audit and a financial statement audit, certainly, whether it be your taxpayers and other users of your financial statements, including many of your funders, we provide a layer of defense, to ensure that the results that are presented in your financial statements, have been validated from a materiality standpoint. Certainly we do not audit 100% of your transactions, but certainly we focus in on the items that are most material, and we do use statistical sampling. So overall, our audit opinion, if one were to read it, effectively states that in our opinion, we are comfortable and satisfied that your financial statements are free of material mistake.
And would you accept an assertion that KPMG, being as large and as experienced as it is, and as expert as it is in the municipal sector, knows where to look?
Absolutely. So before we pick up our pen and start auditing, we already identify those risk areas that would be common to a municipality. And that's where we spend the majority of our time.
And then finally, I know that you audit all of our subunits, including Oakville Enterprises, and Oakville Enterprises also has an audit done by KPMG. Does that help or hinder or affect your work on the town's books in any way? Would it matter to you who was the auditor for one of those subsidiaries?
It does help us because we are effectively your auditor, which means we are the group auditor. The fact that KPMG audits Oakville Enterprises and all of the other components means that we remove a layer of complexity, because we do not need to have a bunch of communications between various firms. I can easily call my fellow partner that signs off on that component file, and we can discuss the results of the financial statement audit. So it does remove a layer of complexity.
So it's favorable for speed, but I'm judging that in your business, the professional standards that you all subscribe to, if it were a different firm, you could still count on them complying with your every need.
100%. We would send them formal instructions on what we would expect of their audit. We would also, depending on the size of the component that they would be auditing, we may request to review their working papers to ensure that their audit approach would be consistent with ours, and that the work that they've done in their audit files is sufficient enough for us to rely on. So absolutely, we would be able to do that.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for your offer for an advice session on cybersecurity. I can tell you that this council has been very, very focused on cybersecurity, and we're very keen to remain not victimized by the crooks and cheats that are out there in the cyber world. Councilor Lischina has a question.
Can you hear me now? Does it work? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Alvarez and Mr. Tardelli, for your presentation. The 31-page document was excellent read. I have a question, though. Most of your audit is based on, I'm going to put in quotation marks, substantive sampling basis. I also just heard statistical in relation to that. Could you expand that a little bit of how the certainty that you feel that you can give a clean audit based on the substantive sampling basis is done?
Through you, Your Worship, the fundamental audit concepts are audits can be control-based or substantive, or a hybrid of both. Generally, if you were a listed entity, those audits would generally be control-based. For non-publicly listed entities, generally they tend to be more substantive-based, because given the volume of transactions, we can get sufficient amount of coverage by doing a lot of substantive work. Our statistical software tools that we use help ensure that we do get enough coverage when we look at our substantive procedures, which would include going down to source documentation, purchase orders, invoices, other documentation. So we are always required to document your processes. We are always required to identify whether we believe that there are significant control deficiencies, but it's through our statistical sampling that we gain comfort that we've looked at enough to be able to collectively provide an audit opinion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, thank you very much, Messieurs, for the presentation and the work. I'm going to ask Council to provide us with a motion to receive your information. Councillor Lischina, thank you very much. Any objection to Councillor Lischina's motion? There being none, that carries. Thank you. Now, Council, the next bit of business in front of you is to approve the financial statements that you've just heard about the audit of. And staff are available if you have further questions, and otherwise a motion is in order. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Is there any objection to Councillor Knoll's motion? Try to say Knoll and motion really fast together and see what you get. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
I'm sorry, my volume went out for a moment. I have a question on the economic development.
We're not there yet.
Okay, well, thank you. My volume seems to be gone.
We're about to get there, though.
Okay.
There being no objection to Councillor Knoll's motion, I declare it carried. Thank you, everybody. And now, as Councillor Haslett-Thiel has perceived, we are arriving at the Economic Development Annual Report. We have Rebecca DX Storms, our Director of Economic Development, and her staff on deck. Looks like Milan is in the batter's circle. Milan, please accept the floor and the Zoom. We're all ears.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of Council. On behalf of the Economic Development Department, I am pleased to present the 2021 Economic Development Annual Report. On January 12th, 2021, the Ontario government declared a state of emergency and issued a 28-day stay-at-home order to address the rise of COVID-19 across the province. The stay-at-home order continued into March when the world marked 1 year of the COVID-19 pandemic. Throughout 2021, the Economic Development Department continued efforts to provide critical support and resources to the business and development community. Tonight, I'll highlight local economic growth, recovery, and resiliency. Throughout 2021, business activity took the form of company arrivals, expansion, and innovation. Oakville welcomed several new companies across various industries and saw a number of existing companies expand, creating approximately 1,000 new jobs. Pictured in the bottom corner of your screen, Wiseacre Studios, one of Canada's leading production companies, transformed nearly 79,000 square feet of warehouse space into a film studio, employing up to 250 skilled workers daily. HealthPro moved its national headquarters to 360 Oakville Place Drive, occupying nearly 12,000 square feet, bringing approximately 100 jobs. In addition to these large employers, Amazon, Danfoss, WorldPac Canada, and National Veterinary Associates Canada also opened facilities in Oakville. Terrestrial Energy reached an exciting milestone as they marked their 100th hire at the Oakville headquarters, adding 38 staff over the course of the year. And Geotab, the world's #1 commercial telematics provider, added 68 new jobs. Both companies have plans for continued expansion in 2022. In addition to these expansions, Steramax, Questica, and ASL Distribution grew their staff complement last year. Continued investment in people, sustainability, and innovation is essential to supporting pandemic recovery and economic growth in Oakville. Spark Power received a $5.3 million investment through the Ontario government's Skills Development Fund to support new and enhanced state-of-the-art training to upskill 500 electrical workers. Siemens Canada virtually inaugurated its first MindSphere Application Center at the Oakville headquarters, serving as an environment for customers and partners to collaborate on driving digital transformation. And Polar Sapphire received a $4.1 million investment through the federal government's Sustainable Development Technology Canada to improve the quality of high purity all alumina used in lithium-ion batteries. This slide shows the annual square footage of non-residential development in Oakville. Commercial is displayed in blue, and industrial is displayed on the screen in gray. As seen in the graph, commercial development activity reflected a reduction from 2020, totaling $69.4 million. While commercial construction values reflected a decrease, the number of permits increased from the previous year due to a higher number of interior alterations and improvements to existing facilities. New development accounted for approximately 160,000 square feet and included the IQ2 and the Interchange office condo developments. The construction of Spark Power's new two-story state-of-the-art headquarters continued construction in 2021 with plans for completion this year. The demand for industrial space continued to rise in 2021, with industrial construction values totaling $54.3 million, an increase of more than double from the previous year. This activity included facility expansions at Zeton, Dana Canada Corporation, and U-Haul Moving and Storage, and the arrival of Kurz Candy and Amazon. The end of 2021 marks nearly 2 years of remote work, with the true long-term impacts of the pandemic on the office and industrial market yet to be seen. Oakville's office vacancy rate continued to increase in the first 3 quarters of 2021, reaching its peak at 20.7% in Q3, whereas Q4 reflected the first decrease in the office vacancy rate since the beginning of the pandemic. While office vacancy rates rose across the province last year, the market remains optimistic with numbers beginning to decline. Conversely, the demand for industrial space continued to grow, outpacing supply throughout 2021. In Q4, the vacancy rate decreased to 1.9%. Given the limited supply and high demand, the net rental rate increased from $10 in Q4 2020 to over $13 per square foot in Q4 2021, marking a new record high in Oakville. For the 3rd year in a row, Site Selection Magazine, an international business publication covering corporate real estate and economic development, listed the town of Oakville in the top 20 of Canada's best locations to invest, recognizing Oakville as a top choice for site selection based on significant investment in the community and company arrivals and facility expansions. Each year, the Economic Development Department benchmarks the town against 17 other GTA municipalities in the area of property taxes, development charges, and industrial land sale values. The data is used to understand how well-positioned our community is for new investment from a cost perspective. Oakville's commercial market remains highly competitive, ranking within the top 5 in cost comparison for taxes and development charges. Oakville's industrial market is comparatively less competitive in the areas of land sale values and taxes, ranking more costly than half of the municipalities, whereas Oakville's cost competitiveness for industrial development charges has improved, and the industrial market demand remains high. Through the year, our department continued to focus on supporting the business community. Together with the Oakville Chamber of Commerce, Oakville Business Improvement Associations, Visit Oakville, and the Halton Region Small Business Center, we formed the Recovery and Resiliency Committee. The committee meets regularly to identify ways to support local businesses through COVID-19 and into recovery. Oakville's new patio program, which was introduced as part of the Commercial Recovery Initiative, allows for patios, bistros, and outdoor merchandising on private and public lands and parking spaces. A total of 112 permits were issued across Oakville in 2021, which was an increase of 20% from the previous year. This year's patio program opened on April 13th and will run until November 1st. Starting in May, the town partnered with the Oakville Chamber of Commerce to provide free rapid antigen test kits to small and medium-sized businesses in the community. Kits were distributed at the former post office, and by the end of the year, 5,463 kits had been distributed to more than 1,100 businesses. Oakville's Digital Main Street program has been successful in serving the business community since 2019. The program was expanded in 2021 through $75,000 in additional funding to support the Digital Service Squad, a free resource available to small businesses. In 2021, the Digital Service Squad worked with 215 businesses across Oakville, with 41 businesses being successful in receiving the $2,500 grant, totaling more than $100,000 in funding. To address the rise in Oakville's office vacancy rate, our department allocated funding received through the federal government's Can Export Community Investment Program to support the creation of an investment attraction campaign. Displayed on the slide, the campaign, Where Living Works, promoted Oakville's livability as a key differentiator for investment. The copy reads, "Business thrives in Oakville because people thrive in Oakville. It's more than balancing work and life. It's established neighborhoods, acclaimed schools, and abundant parklands all in one place. Experience the balance." This campaign launched in November 2021 on site selection and area development, two online publications that are considered among the industry's most respected and frequently used research tools for C-suite decision makers when looking to expand and relocate. In addition to these initiatives, department staff relaunched the Corporate Calling Program, providing an opportunity to have important conversations and gain a stronger understanding of current operations, priorities, and challenges among businesses in Oakville. Our department regularly engaged with the business community as they began the road to recovery, working with our partners to conduct online surveys and virtual meetings to assess the impact of the pandemic and identify areas requiring support. In September 2021, the Peel-Halton Workforce Development Group worked with regional and local municipalities to conduct a GTA online employer survey to identify how the labor market was changing during the current stage of recovery. Post-pandemic, the majority of employers with more than 100 employees expect to move to a hybrid model, with employees working from home 30 to 70% of the time. In November, Halton Region partnered with the local municipalities to conduct a Halton Region Business Recovery Survey to better understand what measures would provide the best assistance in recovery. Of the 700 survey responses, 38% represented Oakville businesses. Non-essential businesses remained the hardest hit, with 90% reporting a decline in revenue. When asked about recovery, 77% of businesses that lost revenue reported that it would take more than 1 year to recover to pre-pandemic levels. In the area of support at the municipal level, businesses would like to see guidance relating to financial assistance, marketing and promotion support, and online presence and e-commerce. Many businesses took advantage of federal and provincial support programs, including the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, the Canada Emergency Rent Subsidy, and the Ontario Small Business Grant. According to Statistics Canada's community-level Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy data, Oakville businesses across various industries utilized the subsidy to pay and rehire staff during the pandemic. When comparing data from March 2020 to March 2021, manufacturing remained the highest in subsidy amount, whereas accommodation and food services and retail trade presented in the top 3 for the subsidy rehire count. We recognize that as subsidies and support programs come to an end, Oakville businesses will require continued support as they continue on the road to recovery. Our department will continue to focus on collaborating with stakeholders on recovery efforts, connecting with the business community to identify areas of support, providing up-to-date information on programming and funding opportunities, applying for additional funding to expand the Digital Main Street program, and supporting the Workplace Self-Screening Rapid Antigen Testing program. In addition to our regular department functions, the following key initiatives were undertaken to support strategic goals and objectives. Our department, in partnership with Building Services, implemented the Building Stream Pilot, a pilot program to provide enhanced service to priority non-residential development applications. The pilot was designed in response to feedback from the business and development community and was identified as a major initiative in Oakville Council's Strategic Plan Refresh 2019 to 2022. In 2021, 3 files were successfully supported through the program, generating key sector job growth and new industrial development. 2 brownfield community improvement plan applications were received and approved in 2021. Oakville's new community profile, Where Living Works, was developed as a continuation of the investment attraction campaign that was launched in November. The profile highlights the advantages of choosing Oakville as a location for business and key information for businesses to make an investment decision. The town received a Marketing Canada Award from the Economic Developers Association of Canada for this publication. The Ontario Auto Mayor's 2021 Action Plan had 3 main areas of focus: competitiveness, investment attraction, and electric vehicle adoption. In November 2021, the provincial government announced Driving Prosperity Phase 2, getting ahead of the curve. The goals outlined in Driving Prosperity Phase 2 directly align with the 2021 Action Plan and will continue to strengthen the Ontario auto sector and ensure it remains competitive. Oakville's film office received more than 100 film requests, generating approximately $750,000 in revenue. Toronto Global, in partnership with Halton Region and the local municipalities, launched a regional targeted campaign with a focus on automation and e-mobility. The campaign provided visibility for Oakville-based companies, including Hexagon Manufacturing, Promation, Javelin Technologies, Ford, Dana Canada Corporation, JML Electric, Geotab, Burloak Technologies, and Siemens Canada. This concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you, Mayor Burton, and members of council for your time this evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, let's just see how you did for generating questions. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Milan, thank you so much, and to Rebecca and the rest of the team, a tremendous report with an incredible amount of detail, and hats off to all the businesses that demonstrated such resilience and collaboration beyond even our wildest dreams over the last 2 years. I have just some simple questions. Digital Main Street was a big support for some of the downtown businesses and across Oakville. But I'm wondering if we have an opportunity to go beyond introducing them to online and sort of warming them up to it, to taking them to the next level so that they continue to learn and grow and prosper, both from using the online technology and allowing it to complement their bricks and mortar stores. Is that a possibility with this Digital Main Street?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for your question, Councillor. So our department has applied for additional funding for the Digital Main Street program, which, if received, will support the continuation of the program for the next 2 years, and will include the opportunity to hire an additional Digital Service Squad member. Through that, we can, certainly explore the opportunity to look for areas of expertise that will take those businesses who have participated in the program and enable them to move to the next level of implementing their digital strategy and exploring other opportunities to enhance their digital presence. So I think it is certainly possible and something we can look at once we've received confirmation that we're going to be receiving the additional funding.
So thank you for that. Very interested to follow that. You mentioned in your report about the Economic Recovery and Resilience Committee, and these reports that we get are tremendous, and they give us a great deal of broader understanding of the successes and the focus for ECDEV. Is it possible to get to council either through, well, I'll leave it to you how you do it, but insight into what's being discussed at the Economic Recovery and Resilience Committee, just so we're a little bit closer to what's happening within the economic community as we're all working towards greater recovery for them?
Through you, Mayor Burton. Yes, so it's my understanding that the meetings take quite an informal approach and operate on the basis of information sharing. However, I do believe that there is a set agenda for each meeting, which we can certainly provide to those who are interested in learning about the topics of discussion and provide further updates on action items that move forward throughout the meeting. So we could certainly do that.
Thank you very much. I just also want to thank Rebecca and yourself for coming out early this morning to the Downtown BIA's annual general meeting. Your presentations were really welcomed, especially the sense of wanting to connect with the small business community and help them understand that there are multiple resources within Oakville and the region that are there for them and champion the local business owners. So thank you very much for coming out to that. And at the appropriate time, I'd be pleased to move it, Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Knoll, and then Councillor Giddings.
Thank you. Not so much a question, but an accolade. You know, we've heard so much negativity and doom and gloom about our recovery, and every report we get from our town staff just proves that we do have possibly the best staff in all areas of the town and what they do. Shopping in the community over the weekend, you know, I saw there's a good sense of people feeling like they're coming back to life and that things are coming into spring again. And this report is just fantastic, just like the reports we keep getting. So thank you so much. And certainly, we have a new grand opening of a new business, I think, tomorrow night in downtown Oakville. Councillor Giddings can talk about that a bit. But anyways, thank you so much. And again, I'm happy that Councillor Hassett-Thiel wanted to move this because I was ready to jump in the fray if I had to.
Well, you know, a little sport like arm wrestling could be fun, especially virtually. Councillor Knoll and then Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Worship. I don't actually have a question, but I do have a comment, just like my colleague before. And I have a particular knowledge and connection to the film industry, and I want to just pass on some compliments that I've received from members of, I'm a member of an association called the CMPA, the Canadian Media Producers Association, and they are so excited that Oakville is actually finally embracing film and television production in our town, and the coordinated one-window approach has really led to a lot of people that would otherwise not choose Oakville to actually consider this community. So thank you. I just want to pass on that thank you that I've heard. I've been on a number of virtual meetings in the last couple of months with them, and it's when they find out that I'm a councillor, they're just gushing over the fact that they feel welcome in this town, as well as their money being welcome in this town to support our restaurants and our shops and all the other businesses that benefit from the film industry, film and television industry being in our community. So on behalf of all of them, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Grant, that would be Cinnaholic that is opening its doors tomorrow evening in downtown Oakville. I appreciate the presentation, and as Councillor Haslett-Thiel said, the BIA meeting bright and early this morning. Around this table over the years, there have been a lot of discussions about downtown, about the BIA. We've had delegations of residents and business owners, large and small, about the rebuilding of downtown. And if you could expand just a little bit in terms of the sense of excitement this morning, in terms of the 40 additional stores. And anyway, if you could expand upon that, it would be great.
Through you, Mayor Burton. Yes, being at the AGM this morning, there was certainly a wonderful energy in the room. Hearing of the more than 45 businesses that have joined the downtown Oakville community last year is exciting. And as some of you have mentioned, you know, walking the streets, it seems like they're alive and bustling, which is always a positive thing to see. So I think great things are happening in downtown Oakville, which is positive for our community. And just to go also back to Councillor Hazat-Thial's question, another great way to stay up to date with what our department is doing is to subscribe to our newsletter and to follow us on social media. We often share information on things and activities and initiatives that we're doing through those platforms. Whether that be business openings or expansions or initiatives within the department, that's one of the other great ways to keep up to date with what we have going on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Hazat-Thial. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, that motion carries and the information is received.
Thank you.
All right, Council, it's now item 9.4, Oakville Enterprises Corporation Annual General Meeting. We are the shareholder, or represent them anyway, and this is both an AGM and a quarterly update. We have Nancy Sully, our Commissioner of Corporate Services and Treasurer, available should you have questions for her, and we have a presentation from OEC staff. Rob Lister, the CEO, Laura Wilson, the CFO, Scott Moody. I'm just going to call him the head of the Hydro Division. And you may have questions about service interruption, and he'll be prepared for you. And David Brennan, the chair of the board. Mr. Lister, we are all ears, and you have the floor and the Zoom, and away you go.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mayor Burton and councillors. Very pleased to be here this evening to kick off our annual general meeting. Today, I have with me Scott Moody, Chief Operating Officer of Oakville Hydro, and Laura Wilson, OEC's Chief Financial Officer. And as the Mayor mentioned, David Brennan, Chair of the Board, is also online for questions. Next slide, please. Well, you're on the next slide. That's good. No, go back there. Thank you. Thank you. Tonight, I will present the proposed directives for OEC and Oakville Hydro for the upcoming year. Then I will speak to the exciting growth that has been occurring at OEC and share some highlights from 2021. Scott Moody will provide a brief overview of this weekend's storm response and will be able to answer questions, as well as an expanded electricity industry update. There's a lot going on in the electricity sector, and Scott has captured the highlights for you this evening. And Laura Wilson will conclude with a presentation of our financial highlights from 2021. So next slide, please. These individuals currently on your screen are the proposed slate of board of directors for OEC and Oakville Hydro. So from left to right, starting at the top, we have Jane Allen, Mayor Rob Burton, Chair David Brennan, Chiffon Byron, Patrick Crowley, Lucy Casasilla, CAO Jane Cloessy, David Pasica, Paul Pastrick, Sarah Lance, Helen Palmer, Cheryl Watson, and Mike Russell. And we'll go to the next slide, please. OEC has continued to perform very well in 2021. We completed the successful acquisitions of QSP Geographics, EMB Management, DPM Energy, and TransPower. Our health and safety program continues to achieve Infrastructure Health and Safety Association recognition for hours worked without lost time incidences, including more than 2 million work hours without lost time injury achieved by Oakville Hydro. It's quite an accomplishment. As we continue to expand our diversity and inclusion program, we launched our Indigenous engagement program to drive inclusion. Our payments to the town continued, and in 2021 equaled $13.6 million. We continue to support critical infrastructure initiatives, including the Building Broadband Faster initiative, where we're working to help connect communities through our support of Ontario's accelerated high-speed internet program. We diversified our business into new geographic areas with the expansion of our company, PVS, into Alberta. Our more than 2,000 employees continue to demonstrate endurance and flexibility navigating a second year of a pandemic environment. We continue to see increasing demand for our geo-exchange solutions by building owners seeking low carbon solutions. And finally, we triumphed with several industry awards, including recognitions from the Electricity Distributors Association, the Ontario Energy Association, and Waterstone Human Capital. So we'll go to the next slide and I'll ask Scott Moody to provide the industry update. Thank you. Scott, you there?
Yes, thank you, Rob. Everyone hear me fine?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors, and town staff. Before I get started on the industry update, I would like to offer council a briefing on the deadly storm that devastated electricity systems from Windsor to Quebec City. Hitting the most populated part of our country, at the peak, over 1 million customers were without power. Utilities, power grids, and communication systems were overwhelmed. Across the province, customer service centers, outage maps, and websites were not able to handle the volume of calls or site visits. Here in Oakville, 11,000 customers, almost 15% of all of our customers, were without power due to a loss of supply from the provincial electricity grid. All crews were called in from their weekend plans to help manage the damage. Once power was restored to the grid, Oakville Hydro staff began the work of assessing the damage and redirecting power to customers as quickly and as safely as possible. Within 4 hours, our control room operators were able to reroute power to over 10,700 customers, leaving 300 or so to be investigated. Next slide, please. Working collaboratively with town staff, Elcon Construction, Oakville Hydro triaged the outages and crews went to work painstakingly restoring service after service by removing fallen trees, repairing broken poles, and restringing grounded wires. By 4:30 a.m. Sunday, less than 15 hours from the start of the storm, the number of Oakville customers without power was down to 30. By 6 p.m. Monday, we returned to normal operation. As of this morning, CP24 was still reporting 150,000 Ontario customers were without power. Next slide, please. Ontario's electricity market is undergoing transformative change and is entering a period of increasing demand. The Independent Electricity System Operator, or the IESO, forecasts steady growth of current demand from its 2021 peak of around 23,000 megawatt. An estimated 7,000 megawatts will need to be contracted amongst existing and new resources to meet capacity needs emerging by 2025. However, once Pickering Nuclear fully retires in advance of the summer of 2026, this demand is forecasted to grow by an additional 12,000 megawatts in the 2030s. Future policy decisions, customer choice, and economic growth mean long-term demand carries the potential to stress the electricity system both at the bulk transmission and distribution levels. Predicting the timing, location, and scale of increases in electricity demand is becoming more challenging. For the first time in nearly 20 years, the Ontario electricity market is facing a scarcity of supply. Multiple layers of government are looking to electrification to meet climate change and emission reduction goals. The electrification of transportation and building heating is driving demand forecasts to new levels. The government of Ontario is reviewing its current long-term energy planning process with the goal of increasing the effectiveness, transparency, predictability, and accountability of energy decision-making. An expert panel has been established to provide advice to the Minister of Energy on various issues related to integrated long-term energy planning in Ontario, and to help manage the wide-ranging issues that require careful consideration and coordination in transitioning to a clean energy economy. The panel will provide advice and guidance on long-term energy planning, how to support growing energy demand, and low-carbon fuel switching through emerging technologies. David Cawley, former president and CEO of the Electrical Safety Authority and former president and CEO of Burlington Hydro, is the advisory panel's chair. Regardless of the outcome of the approaching provincial election, the new government will need to be focused on affordability, reliability, flexibility, and sustainability of Ontario's electricity market. Next slide, please. With some experts predicting that electricity supply will need to double or triple in the next decade to accommodate electrification of everything, the future of Ontario's electricity supply mix will need to balance green, innovative technologies with affordability. Solar and wind are dropping in price and becoming commonplace in most jurisdictions around the globe. However, land requirements for large-scale installations for these technologies remain an obstacle. The federal government has set a goal to achieve a net zero electricity grid by 2035. To get to the goal will require investment in existing renewable, new technologies, conservation and demand management, energy storage, and conventional generation. Flexible, dispatchable generation and peak load management solutions will likely command a premium in priority and price. Some of the challenges facing the supply mix are increasing demand for scarce materials globally, a skilled trade shortage, and foreign exchange and inflationary risks that are driving up costs. The federal government has stepped up to affect the market through the development of sticks in the form of carbon pricing, emerging clean energy standard, but also through carrots in the form of billions of subsidies through programs such as the Strategic Innovation Fund, Smart Renewables and Electrification Pathways Program, Low Carbon Economy Fund, and the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Ontario has been open to securing these funds for projects that align with mutual objectives, helping to suppress the need to recover those costs from the electricity rate base or the provincial treasury. Most observers now agree that Indigenous participation and partnerships are vital for successful energy infrastructure development. Increased funding and incentives through the ISO for offtake arrangements are being offered to encourage meaningful Indigenous participation. Next slide, please. There has been some movement to streamline regulations at the Ontario Energy Board, or the OEB, and we expect this will continue. In the most recent provincial budget tabled before the election, the government pledged to extend time-limited relief for the electricity distribution sector until December 31st, 2024. This is a regulatory extension of an original measure of 2016 introduced to encourage the merging and consolidation of Ontario's LDCs, or local distribution companies. There are currently around 60 LDCs left in Ontario. The measure reduces the transfer tax on the sale of LDCs from 33% to 22% for larger utilities, and reduces it to zero for utilities with fewer than 30,000 customers. Additionally, any capital gains arising under the payments in lieu of tax deemed disposition rules are exempt. There are a couple mergers of electrical utilities ongoing in Ontario. The most active and public mergers are the Cambridge-Brantford merger and the Kitchener-Wilmot and Waterloo North merger. Energy Plus and Brantford Power have merged into a single distribution company. The cities of Cambridge and Brantford are majority shareholders. The name of the new company is Grand Bridge Energy and has a combined customer count of 109,000. Kitchener-Wilmot and Waterloo North have submitted their application to the OEB for a merger and are in the process of the OEB's regulatory no harm test. Once all approvals are in place, the plan is to announce a new name at the end of June. Merged in 2019, the shareholders of Alexicon include the town of Whitby, the city of Pickering, the town of Ajax, the municipality of Clarington, and the city of Belleville. Recently, the city of Pickering has decided to monetize its 28% share of the merged utility and is seeking a buyer. Pickering has engaged a third party to help with the divestiture. Next slide, please. Oakville Hydro is a founding member of Grid Smart City. Grid Smart City is a consortium of 33 partner organizations comprised of 15 municipally owned LDCs in Ontario and 18 commercial entities, academia, and other key stakeholders. The consortium fosters a culture of collaboration focused on finding efficiencies, delivering value to customers, and enhancing the overall sustainability of the local distribution company. Our president and CEO, Rob Lister, is the chair of Grid Smart City. I believe the upcoming video will paint the story. Could you play the video, please?
The emergence of the smart grid gave birth to a dynamic collaboration in Ontario. We're called Grid Smart City. Our group engages a cross-section of stakeholders, including corporate partners, industry organizations, academia, and others. Mid-size local distribution companies, or LDCs, who manage every aspect of electricity distribution in their respective communities, make up our core. Grid Smart City's original mission was to advance smart grid innovation in Ontario, and that remains an important focus. As our membership grew, our mandate and initiatives have evolved. The Grid Smart City Cooperative was established in 2013. We work collectively to tackle industry challenges and opportunities. Our approach delivers benefits that can't be easily replicated with other models. We draw our strength from the communities we serve. From the shores of Kingston to the Niagara Peninsula, across Halton and into the Kitchener-Waterloo hub, through the southwestern portion of the province, and finally, into the border city of Windsor. The Grid Smart City Cooperative encompasses 40 communities, serves close to 800,000 customers, contains almost 6,000 square kilometers of landmass, and manages more than $2.8 billion in assets. Collectively, we focus on 3 key deliverables. We work together to achieve scale efficiencies and purchasing power.
The Grid Smart City Cooperative is a model that allows the utility members to do things that they couldn't do otherwise on their own. As a group, we have a purchasing power that makes us feel like one of the larger utilities in the province, and yet we still maintain our local autonomy. We can share our knowledge, our skills, and our experience quite freely in a collaborative manner that allows all of us to be much more efficient and effective at what we do. And that's to the benefit of the customer.
We leverage our local community.
As a cooperative member, Enwin maintains independent local ownership. That doesn't change. Our focus remains on building strong, sustainable communities, while at the same time driving up efficiencies in our business.
We implement innovative solutions for the benefit of our customers.
S&C Electric's focus on continuous innovation is what led us to Grid Smart City. We've been a corporate partner since the organization's inception, sharing perspectives on power delivery challenges, making the electric grid more resilient, and anticipating the changing market is what drives us together.
Going forward, utilities need to do more than distribute power. They need to control it. And Grid Smart City enables Olimeter to help utilities deal with this monumental change and to stay ahead of the curve.
Grid Smart City, entrenched in community, a collective focus on efficiency and innovation, a formula for operational excellence today and into the future.
Next slide, please. The Government of Ontario is requiring that electricity and natural gas utilities implement the Green Button Connect My Data and Green Button Download My Data standards by November of 2023. Implementation of these standards will provide customers with easy and secure access to their energy usage information in a standardized, consumer and computer-friendly format. The government is moving forward with the implementation of a new ultra-low overnight time of use electricity price plan to further incent demand shifting away from peak periods to lower demand periods. The proposed plan, if it were in place today, would offer electricity at 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour overnight, which is about 70% lower than the current off-peak rate. The new price plan is scheduled to be available to customers by April of 2023. Over the past 4 years, the provincial electricity sector has experienced widespread recognition for the critical role that will be played by transactive energy platforms and distributed energy resources, or DERs. A high DER future carries potential pathways and interactive configurations for our provincial electricity system. One popular example is what's called a distribution system operator model, or DSO model. In a DSO model, Oakville Hydro would both monitor and control the grid connectivity that links Oakville customers with local and regional electricity markets. Oakville Hydro would partner with or enable local DER owners to maximize both the value of the asset and the benefit to the grid. The strategic placement of dispatching of DERs can increase grid resiliency, offer an alternative large-scale centralized generation, and provide meaningful revenue opportunities for customers. While Ontario will remain oversupplied most of the time during the winter and overnight, for the next several years, we have a growing supply deficit starting in 2025, but significantly in 2026. New assets are being invested in, such as a new transmission intertie to Pennsylvania, but this won't be ready until 2027. Energy storage could be part of the solution, but batteries are competing against electric vehicles and global supply chains are tightening. To enable and leverage these innovative business models and generation alternatives, the OEB will need to make significant changes to existing regulations. This work is ongoing. Given this trend, the electricity sector transition will come not from centralized directives, but from the organized pursuit and realization of emerging commercial opportunities by various market participants. Next slide, please. The recently released emissions reductions plan sets out the objective to reduce emissions from transportation by 43 megatons of carbon dioxide from 186 in 2019 to 143 in 2030. Effectively, the transportation sector is the second highest emitting, only behind oil and gas as of 2022. The plan outlines decarbonization of the transportation sector as a core pillar in achieving climate objectives and notes that expanding public net zero transportation will be critical to realize the 2030 objective. The Government of Canada has several mechanisms available to support public transit decarbonization. These mechanisms help with the procurement of public transit e-buses and building the supporting infrastructure. There are an estimated 51,000 EVs on the road in Ontario. Some are predicting this number to grow beyond 500,000 by 2030. Oakville Hydro is preparing the distribution grid to support the electrification of transportation. Powered through artificial intelligence and data analytics, Oakville Hydro is simulating various scenarios of EV deployment, looking for pain points and vulnerabilities in their distribution network. Through targeted reinvestments, we will be able to enhance the network and support our customers as they switch from traditional internal combustion engines to zero-emission electric vehicles. Thank you. Laura will now take you through the 2021 financial highlight.
Laura, I wonder, given the questions that Mr. Moody has generated and the fact that I have a couple of my own, could you stand by and let's let these questions go to Scott now? Thank you. Councillor Elgar, Giddings, Longo, and O'Meara. Al, you're first.
Thank you. To you, Mayor Burton. Question regarding the grid. Do we have the grid capacity to take the switch over from the...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I can't hear.
Better? That might work better. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Do we have the grid or the ability to make the grid available to allow for all vehicles to be electric going forward, if that happened? I know we're, 10% growth in electric vehicles. If it goes to 20 and 30%, do households, all households start getting electric vehicles? Will the grid withstand that in the current environment?
Yeah, excellent question, Councillor Elgar, and through you, Mr. Mayor. That is precisely why we're performing the studies that we're doing and simulating different layers of adoption, of EED adoption. One view is a very balanced EV adoption across Oakville, which would be much easier to handle than perhaps all of the adoption in one small area. So we're looking at all those different scenarios. The short answer is we believe we have the resources to accommodate and to keep up with the pace of adoption.
So even if between now and 2031, what is the projected increase in number of vehicles that will be electric? Do we have
so there's varying opinions on that, let's say, but I can say, at the moment we're looking, I think here, today in Oakville, we have around, including plug-in hybrid vehicles, we have around 2,800 vehicles, approaching 3,000. By this time, this was effective December 31st, 2021. And we haven't seen any meaningful or significant stresses on our distribution system. If that were to multiply by 10, I think as long as it was distributed across our distribution system and not really in one small area, then I still believe we're in very good shape, Councillor.
Well, I thank you, and I realize you've got quite a challenge ahead of you if, in fact, we do switch over to electric the way everybody will be going. So thank you, and I guess we're just keep investing in the infrastructure, so thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And Mr. Moody and possibly Mr. Lister, you might want to just add the extra dimension for Council's understanding that if you need to invest in upgrading the grid, this is actually beneficial to the shareholder because it goes into our rate base, as I understand it. Can you, do one of you want to just add that extra dimension to this?
Sure, I can offer some context there, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So through our regulated capital program, every dollar that we invest that is allowable under that regulatory regime goes into our rate base, and our profitability or our ability to generate revenue is a function of the size of that rate base. And so, as Oakville grows, as Oakville requires additional electricity assets to support the decarbonization of transportation, and at some point in the future, and probably not too distant future, building heating, then we will be compensated for those investments.
Good news, eh? Councillor Giddings, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, COO Moody, first of all, thank you and your staff for the efforts over the weekend, and great to hear that the lost time injuries is still incredibly good for the safety of your workers. It was quite the weekend we had. We started off early in Ward 3 with a power failure that affected a number of homes, but the one the next day kind of set us back on our heels a little bit, and all we have to do is look at the carnage that was experienced across the province to realize the severity. And it could have been, the scary thing is it could have been worse. In terms of, in our area, as well as other parts of Oakville, the tree trimming has certainly helped. We had a pretty rough past 5 months. The tree trimming has helped. The critters that sacrifice themselves to test your system seem to have abated as well. But we had some difficulties on the weekend with communications. I tried not to reach out to you, but after about 2 hours on hold and the system saying they'd be with me in 5 minutes, I had to reach out because the phone calls were coming fast and furious. And so I thank you for getting back to me. In terms of, we can't do anything about the storms, and they're going to come more frequently. What can we do about the communications so we can keep our residents up to date, whether it be the phone lines, Twitter, the outage map, when the next one comes?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for the question, Councillor. And yes, we did see failures of our communication systems, not unlike many of the utilities across Ontario. Quite frankly, the system was overwhelmed. Our backup call centers are based here in Ontario as well, and are common to many of our LDC partners who were all drawing on that same service. And so part of our postmortem of this storm is to look at our points of failure, provide and look for improvements and make those changes, one of which may be sourcing out of province help to answer calls and to provide communication support.
So number of hydros across the province make use of the same call center.
Correct.
And the whole province was hit. I appreciate that. And you'll report back to us in due time in terms of the updates that are going to be made, or as they're made?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And the last question I have, could you briefly express phasing? Received more calls on difficulties with, you had told me about it on the weekend. Rather difficult calls. I experienced that personally as a result of an equipment failure last year. But for any of the other councillors or people that may be watching this evening, could you briefly explain what that is?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Very simply, when depending on the issue, phasing can affect an electrical service where it won't provide you all of the voltage. So you can have partial voltage, you can have over voltage situations. And of course, we've had that situation with Councillor Knoll in his area earlier this year when a transformer was hit by a snowplow. So depending on the issue, you'll have power quality problems. What your constituents experience was partial voltage. So you would not be able to have plug-in appliances and have them run at full capacity. You would see lights dimming or flickering, that sort of thing.
Any worry for the residents in terms of appliances or equipment or anything that is run on that?
It varies. It definitely varies depending on the type of appliance and whether or not it was under load at the time of the re-energization. But if there are issues, then certainly I would call in an electrician or an expert to investigate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Mr. Moody, for the presentation. I have one comment and then two questions. The first comment is just to thank the men and women of Oakville Hydro who did work over the weekend. They actually changed their plans over a holiday weekend in order to help the residents and businesses of Oakville. So they should be commended. And I think, as was mentioned, there are still people in Ontario who do not have power. So I think Oakville fared quite well. So that's my comment. The first question is related to the Grid Smart City Cooperative. This looks like a really excellent opportunity, especially when it comes to leveraging buying power. Is there any opportunity to look at buying and working with companies that are Canadian or Ontario made products and services to help with the work that's going to be done with that cooperative?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Grid Smart City has one of the first committees and initiatives that we undertook was a procurement group, a buying group. And, with 15 partners in that buying group and that co-op, we found some significant and material savings that we were able to share with the group, from cabling to conduit, transformers, quite a long list. Secondly, we were able to, and there are quite a number of locally sourced, Ontario-made products, from insulators to transformers and conduits. So yeah, we have a great list of local suppliers. We are very active within that industry or that local industry in supporting that. Of course, like anything else, the quality and the price has to be there. But given everything being the same, then we're very happy to support our local suppliers.
Excellent. And then just my last question is related to the Oakville Energy Task Force. When we talked about commitments of businesses, I think Oakville Hydro and OEC in general have been at the table the whole time. Can you talk a little bit, and you didn't really mention it in the presentation, but about district energy and any opportunities that Oakville Hydro is currently working on? Because I think that also plays to climate resiliency and greenhouse gas emission reduction.
Sure. Absolutely, and yeah, didn't mean to leave it out. Lots in the presentation, but thank you very much for the question. And through you, Mayor Burton, we have a number of exciting projects that for district energy and for what we're now looking more like geo-exchange projects that use a centralized loop in order to effectively get to the same result, which is more efficient use of energy, and in the case of geo-exchange, emissions-free energy. And so around the hospital lands is a focus area for us, and we're in talks with a few developers there. We're also looking at Midtown around the Cross area and the redevelopment there. We believe there are some really good opportunities to provide district energy or geo-exchange solutions to the developers and to the area. We work hand in hand with town staff right now on any leads or any developers that show an interest in speaking with us. So it's a very active pipeline. And these projects tend to be quite large, but are also excellent opportunities to place capital. So we're very excited about the future of this asset class.
So thank you for that. And I think that just reinforces the importance of it takes a whole community. It's not just the town of Oakville, it's actually the businesses and the residents of the town to help with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Knoll is next.
Thank you, Worship. I have a long list of questions as a tech nerd, but I'm going to cull the list a little bit and try to focus to spare some time. My first question is, actually, it dovetails with Councillor Elgar's question regarding infrastructure for EVs from the supply side. I had asked a question of our planning staff a few weeks ago on the consumption side about the capacity of homes under current building code or electrical code. I'm not sure which of the provincial statutes regulates the minimum standards for homes, but as we move more into EVs and potential electrification of heating and things like that, I'm wondering if 100 amp service, which seems to be the standard in most subdivisions, is actually sufficient. Is there any talk in the industry about potentially changing minimum standards for home builders in terms of providing in-house infrastructure? Because in my own home, I'm already at the limit, for example. And in fact, when my EV charger was installed, the ESA technician or the ESA inspector throttled my EV charger because I didn't have enough power. I have 100 amp service. So I now regret that I didn't think about upgrading that when I had my home built. So the question is, again, is there some talk in the industry about potentially right-sizing new home infrastructure to accommodate the future growth of electrical need?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, excellent question, Councillor. Specifically around, it's one thing for me to talk about our grid capability and being able to get the power to the end user. It's another for the end user to be able to use it.
Right.
Many panels that are 100 amp moving forward will be undersized. I'll give you an example. There's a truck coming out that is in a pure electric truck. I believe they have a manufacturing facility here in Oakville. That particular truck requires a 90 amp breaker. And so if that continues, because the trend is to try and lower charging times so that it's not a 45 or a 2-hour charge, then that breaker and that energy load will go up. And so we, as Oakville Hydro, we provide a 200 amp or a cable to new services that is able to handle 200 amps. So from our perspective, going forward, we're fine. From a homeowner's perspective, from a new homeowner's perspective, I would suggest that they look at a 200 amp panel. And then there are talks, both provincially here in Ontario and across the country, that I have heard of around increasing the electrical building codes to accommodate the electrification of both building heating and transportation.
Yeah, I think that's critical, because as much as we make these improvements and greening technology, if we don't have the capacity to plug into them, then it's pointless. My second question is, Mr. Lister referred to one of the initiatives as participating in a broadband program. What is our connection to broadband now? I know we sold our asset quite a while ago for a tidy little profit. So what's our current involvement in the broadband sector?
Right.
We have, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have two companies that provide engineering services to the telecom companies. So we do mid-tier engineering work, and so we're supporting the telecom industry, but we're not in the telecom business.
Okay, I missed that part. So it's us supporting the infrastructure.
It's a service.
Okay.
Service that we provide from our infrastructure services group.
As a critical part of it as well, I want to say thank you for your proactive update. I know that there were some communications issues, but as a councillor, I do appreciate the email that went out proactively giving us the update. I was able to flip that around in my social media channels, and I hope augmented or help with some of the communications challenges. I do want to, you touched on the snowplow incident in Ward 5 a couple months ago, and that was a highlight to me where, you know, the combination of that and what we just went through recently, it really sends a message to me that the one area, and this is the only fault I can find in all of Hydro, is this communications piece. And so I would emphasize finding new ways, perhaps investigating things like reverse 911 and facilities like that may be able to be used to be more proactive in terms of getting out to our community. And I'm going to ask one more question, but I got a lot more. Maybe I'll talk to you offline. So the Hydro 1 failure on Saturday, where did that occur? Was it before, like was it the local switch at Trafalgar Road, or was it somewhere further upstream? So I'm just curious, like how close to us was it? And I'm going to give you the second part of that question, and then I will shut off my mic so I'm not tempted to ask you another question. The second part of that question is, did our Glenorchy switching facility benefit our ability to reroute power, limit the outage, et cetera? That's a little bit, give you an opportunity to give a plug to our strategic investment there.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The outage on the transmission grid took out both our Palermo TS station, which is Hydro 1 owned, but also took out the Glenorchy, which is ours. And so we lost supply, essentially. And so that, of course, limits our ability to reroute power because those feeders from those sections, some feeders can provide electricity to 5,000 plus customers. What does allow us, however, to reroute power quickly and in infinitesimal ways is the automation that we have invested in and that we have built within our system. We have automatic or remote switching gear all over the town that allows us to redirect power to areas that have lost power supply. That is not common across LDCs in Ontario. We have a very automated system, and that ability is really lowers the duration of many of our outages. It doesn't necessarily lower the frequency, certainly though does manage the duration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Councillor O'Meara, thank you for your patience.
No problem. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Scott and Rob, thank you very much, and all your team for everything you guys did on the weekend. I just want to pull on the thread a little bit more, like Councillor Giddings was, just with regards to the comments that I received and emails. And they did all the right things, residents. They got to the Oakville Hydro website. They got onto the outage map. And then they saw that their house didn't have any outages reported, but they had no energy, no electricity. And I think maybe in the moratorium or the debrief, we can just maybe look at how that happens, because I think that instilled panic. I think they thought, oh my gosh, Oakville Hydro thinks everything's fine and it's not fine, and now they're log jamming the phones to make sure it's not fine. And I think that sent a little people into squirrely places because they thought they were going to get left out, and everybody thinks it was fine. So I'll just leave that with you. But that was the only, I was just so surprised how everybody had got to that point where they needed to go to check to see what the status was. So I was very happy with that, and just want to thank you guys for that as well. And just maybe you can put your finger on that last little piece there to see sort of how that happens. And then I'm sure that would have alleviated a lot of concerns, because I know people all knew what we were in for together, and they were willing to wait if they knew that, yeah, we're in the queue, we'll get there soon. But I just think that drove a little bit of panic into them when they said that their house was fine and they knew it wasn't. So anyway, thank you for that. If you might take that away too, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I echo, thank you for to the front line for the many, many hours they put in. Just as a further comment on communication, I happen to have to deal with Hydro One on the weekend, and they use a text-based system. And so when there is an outage, you get a text, and the text allows you to respond even to the text with confirming whether you're up again, if you get to even write stat if you want a new update. So for whatever reason, that gives people comfort. So I'm not sure if, I know that earlier this year you had talked to us about some improvements in communication. I'm not sure if that text messaging is still on that list, but I'd echo what's been said by a few others. Knowing that you're in the queue and knowing somebody's got it takes half the panic out of individuals. And the other comment that residents have said to me is they'd like, if they're in the quote unquote phasing, if that can be posted up on the website so that they can be informed that of the risk of that and that it's occurring. So I'll leave that section there. You mentioned earlier about $1 allowable goes to the rate base, and you used the phrase allowable. So I just wanted to understand what constrains what is allowable in terms of an investment in the grid, given that we have an increasingly high demand for electricity.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a long list of allowable assets to be rate-based. However, the general spirit of the list is, is it an asset that will be used to operate or to enhance or to maintain the distribution grid? It can't be solely for the benefit of one customer, for instance. If any asset or investment requires a cost or investment evaluation to understand that the asset will recover the cost of the installation over the expected lifespan of that asset, and at that point, if we don't meet that certain threshold, then we ask for a capital contribution from the customer base that will be benefiting from that asset. To give you more specifics around electric vehicles, right, the cables and the infrastructure required to provide service to an electric charger can be put in rate base. An electric charger cannot be put into rate base at the moment.
Okay. I think I got all that. Thank you for that explanation.
It is a complicated.
But I think it's essential.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about, what you presented and what I took away from part of it is all of our encouragement to go EV and the increasing reliance we have. We need to be prepared to make those investments, and we need to make sure that we're not constraining the appropriate investment. So, we don't have people going out and buying electric vehicles and then all of a sudden turning around and saying, I do not have the power to do what I need to do in 10 or 15 years. I know it's not a problem today. So my last question is, you talked about some scenarios and simulations, and but one of the simulations or scenarios was you referenced the spreading out of the distribution of those the purchases of going to EV cars, but you don't control that. So from a mitigation plan, knowing that you can't control which consumer in Oakville and the pockets, what have you thought of in terms of being able to support an area that may have a higher EV growth?
Right. So in those scenarios, those are definitely investments that we could make a business case to put into rate base if that scenario played out. The point of doing the simulations is to literally continue to layer on load and adoption of EVs until the system fails, so that we can find where those pain points are. And then we can back up from the cables to the transformers to the stations to understand where those pain points may be and get those on our list, on our investment plan, so that we can stay ahead of those types of scenarios. Of course, those simulations are not a one and done solution. We will continue multiple times over a year to continue to rerun those simulations with new information and keep that information updated and keep those simulations updated so that we can at least provide ourselves some line of sight as to where this is going and where the trends are pointing us.
So I'll just thank you so much for that. So I'll just close with saying, so you'll be back to us with more insights into investments that we need to make in the grid over time as you make your regular reports to council, is what I would assume.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Yeah, I just want to add that Oakville Hydro, just like the town, has a long-range capital forecast, which, as the town does, can be thought of as a long-range capital budget. And these simulations and these estimates that are ongoing, as you've just heard, are used to make sure that in other words, both organizations have to plan out into the future and guess and check and change as the future unfolds. And I hope that gives people a little bit more comfort and clarity on that point. We have two more first-timers, Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Lischina, and then we'll be back to Councillor Elger.
Thank you, Worship. Help me understand, Scott, with respect to the end user with the charging. Is there within the business plan or a projection or the forecast of Oakville Hydro investing in itself or companies to build and put these chargers in at residential units and also apartments and condominiums? Would we get involved in an investment with other companies that would be doing that service, provide that service, in order to, at the end of the day, it might be a profit for Hydro?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. No, we're not in the business of saying no to business opportunities that may show a profit, especially when it's well within our wheelhouse, which is electricity supply, charging. So if a business model came up that made sense for OEC to participate in, we would put that through our normal course of evaluations, bring that recommendation to the board and to council to see whether or not that would be something that we would be willing to enter into.
Notwithstanding Councillor Knoll's comment with the 200 amp, and I know you have your electricians and everything else that do that, and you put sub panels in after 100, which I did personally, put a sub panel in. However, with the opportunity and knowing, I guess go back to Foreign Falls functions, that the infrastructure, the car manufacturers are going full throttle on electric vehicles. I just don't want to see us chasing it, trying to accommodate the whole vehicle industry and how we're going to charge these vehicles. And it would, if that's the case, I mean, we're following it. The logic would be we need, to put in these chargers everywhere very quickly, and we have to be sustainable too through our transmissions. So it's something that to look forward to, and to keep our thumb on that one with respect to investment possibilities in the future on charging units. I just leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm, for the suggestion. Councillor Lischina.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for that report, Mr. Lister and Mr. Moody. My question is, with the summer, not again.
It is on.
It is on, isn't it? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you.
Oh my God, I'm getting a little worried about this. Everybody can hear me? Yes?
I can hear you.
Tom can hear me. He's right next to me. There you go. Apologies for that. With the summer coming, and I recall in the past there was the smart meters and smart thermostats and all of that, talking about being able to power down when there was very high use of hydro and to avoiding blackouts. What's the status of that?
That program is with the IESO. I don't believe it's an active program at the moment because given the surplus of electricity supply based on the loss of demand or the erosion of demand, we haven't had to really worry about that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ilger?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Scott, I'm interested in your comment about the 100 amp versus the 200 amp. What year was the 200 amp gauge cable put into houses in Oakville? So that a new house was, if it was built like in the 70s or 80s, would it have the gauge for 200 amp or 100 amp?
Well, so through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that would be around 2014 when the building code was changed to require that gauge of cable. That the building code has since been changed again to take away that requirement. But at some point,
you didn't pay your bill.
Yeah, no, it's I'm in the office too late. It's telling me to go. It's the energy management system just turned off the lights. I apologize.
So Scott, so if a house was built prior, did you say 2014?
Yeah, I believe it was around 2014, Councillor. I can check the exact date, but it was around there where we had to start putting in larger cabling systems to meet code.
Okay, so after 2014, anybody that purchased a new house has the ability to swap out 100 for a 200. I'm also curious, Councillor Chisholm.
A quick call, sorry, Councillor, quick call to us. We can definitely confirm that for anybody.
I appreciate that. Now, Councillor Chisholm mentioned his, he calls it a sub panel. A lot of people call them pony panels. Does that help you? Really? Because you've only got a 100 amp cable coming in and you're running a pony panel or a sub panel? Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, depending on the layering and stacking of the load, no, not really. It doesn't.
Okay. No, thank you. A lot of good information here coming out tonight because I think going forward, people are going to be asking a lot of questions because we will be going electric. There's no question. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We got all the way into kind of a red-green level of showing how handy we are here. So now I think we can turn to Laura. Thank you for your patience, CFO Wilson. And you now have our undivided attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next slide, please. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Laura Wilson, and I'm pleased to present our 2021 financial highlights. OEC continued to provide strong financial growth in 2021, driven by both acquisitions and organic growth. Compared to 2020, we saw more than 21% growth in total comprehensive income, finishing the year at $13.9 million. Payments to the town were $13.6 million, including the annual dividend of $6.1 million. The 2021 acquisitions of EMB Management, DPM Energy, and TransPower have naturally increased our assets and liabilities. Shareholders' equity at December 31st, 2021 was $154.6 million. Next slide, please. This concludes OEC's review of 2021 and our industry update. Amid the dynamic environment of 2021, we were very pleased with the dedication and resilience of our teams. We continue to grow for the future and will work to create an even more prosperous 2022. Thank you for your time this evening, and we would be pleased to answer any questions if there are any remaining.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson. I'm looking and I'm not seeing any. I guess there were more red greens on the panel tonight than bankers. So back to you, Mr. Lister.
Thank you much, Mr. Mayor and Council, that does conclude the information we wanted to present this evening, and we certainly do appreciate the questions that we had the opportunity to answer. So I will conclude at this point, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lister. Council, the motion in the agenda, Councilor O'Meara, do you have a motion or a question?
A motion.
Thank you. So Councilor O'Meara is moving the motion as presented in the agenda. Basically, the receipt of the information, the approval of the resolutions as submitted by the board chair of Oakville Enterprises Corporation and the correspondence that you have, the acceptance of the consolidated audited financial statements, and the compensation for directors of enterprises and its affiliates. And that I, as the shareholder representative, pursuant to the shareholder declaration, be authorized to sign the resolutions for and behalf of the town in its capacity as the sole shareholder. Is there any objection to Councilor O'Meara's motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, I declare that carried. Thank you, everybody. Now,
thank you.
Council, we will. You had a report earlier this evening on how what it worked out to was that out of 84 hours of council meetings last year, only I think only 6, or a very small percentage, were passed in camera. And as you know, most of that was for serious litigation matters. But this evening, we have an opportunity to not add to that total. If I can get a mover that the 2 citizens outlined in the confidential memo from the Commissioner of Community Services and the Library Board CEO regarding 2 citizen appointments to the Oakville Public Library Board for the remainder of the term of council ending on November 14th or until their successor is appointed, be approved. Councillor Knoll is happy to move that. Councillor Haslett-Thiel, were you offering to move that too? Councillor, well, actually, there's no difference between the two of you. You're both on the board. Would a member of council who's not on the board like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Lischena. I just, that shows wider support, let's call it. Any objection to the motion by Councillor Lischena? Madam Clerk, there being none, those 2 citizens are appointed. And if I had their names handy, I would announce them now, but I think we'll leave it to the library board to make the announcement. All right. In the same spirit, there is confidential item 10.2, and this is the Oakville Enterprises appointment of directors and chair. And Councillor Longo, thank you for the motion. Is there any objection? Madam Clerk, there being none, that's carried, and we'll let Oakville Enterprises make those announcements because, once again, I don't have those names handy. Now, Council, we do need to resolve into camera, at least for a moment, for a closed meeting session for the purpose of dealing with the security of the property of the municipality or local board, advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications for that purpose, and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Who would like to move that? Councillor Elger, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, I declare the motion carried. I would like a little recess now. We've been working for 2 hours, and we need a few minutes to resolve into a session closed to the public for the aforementioned purpose. So from some experience, I think we know that this will take more than 2 minutes. So it's 8:38. Let's return at 8:45. We're in recess. All right, council is back in public session, having resolved into a meeting closed to the public to deal with the security of the property of the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or the local board as permitted under the Municipal Act and our Code of Conduct. I understand, Councillor Longo, that you'll provide us with a motion that the confidential report entitled OEC Update Legal from the Legal Department dated May 10th be received. Thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, the motion carries. We have no advisory committee minutes this evening. However, we've reached the point where it would be in order for a motion to rise and report to council. Councillor Adams, thank you for your quick hand. Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, that carries. I rise and report. The Committee of the Whole has met and has made recommendations on consent items 7.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and discussion items 9.1, 2, 3, and 4, and confidential discussion items 10.1, 2, and 3, as noted by the clerk. May I have a mover and seconder for approval of the report? Councillor Knoll, Councillor Giddings, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the report is approved. Council, you have your information items, which are circulated electronically, your status of outstanding issues. And under new business, we have a notice of motion on the GTA West corridor, moved by Councillor Dudek and Councillor Chisholm, which we would take up at the next council meeting of June 20th. Councillor Adams, I recognize your hand.
Thanks very much. At this point, I just want to take a moment to recognize that May is National Food Allergy or Anaphylaxis Awareness Month. Anaphylaxis is a very serious allergic reaction, and those with a food allergy are always only a single mistake away from having a life-threatening medical emergency. Anaphylaxis affects about 3 million Canadians and some 32 million Americans across the border, so about 7.5% of the population. So with 1 in 13 Canadians and half of them being under the age of 35, that means that about 2 students in every classroom at schools are affected, and everybody knows someone. If it's not you, it might be a family member or a close friend. Everybody knows somebody. And the month of May will help shine a light on the challenges of safely navigating the world with these life-threatening allergies. And so with iconic landmarks all over the world being lit up in teal. And so in Oakville, we're lighting up Town Hall in teal tomorrow evening to recognize National Food Allergy Awareness Month. And so I want to thank our staff for helping us with that. And finally, I wanted to thank Debbie Bruce, who's the director of the Canadian Anaphylaxis Initiative, for her ongoing work at increasing awareness of this very serious health concern that affects all of us, either directly or indirectly. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. It might be 7.5% of Canadians, but it's 33% of my children. So I'm very grateful to you for bringing this forward. Councillor Dudek.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted to share mostly for the benefit of the public who may not be aware, especially sort of building on our discussions this evening with the storm we recently experienced. Today at Halton Region, we passed a motion that will enable our regional staff to work with municipal staff to confirm what areas require additional waste and yard waste collection. And they'll make arrangement for special collection services this week and next week to assist in debris cleanup. And additional trucks will be dedicated to oversized yard waste. And they're also waiving the fee for yard waste disposal at the regional waste facility until June 7th, because I know we've had a lot of questions about people putting things curbside and will it be picked up and how will it be picked up. And if you have any questions, 311 is able to assist. But as I say, they are on the job, or as Paw Patrol chases on the case. 2 letters or 2 notices of condolences. Recently, Glenn McTavish passed away. And for those of us who grew up in Oakville, the McTavish family is quite well known. Glenn grew up in Oakville and attended Thomas A. Blakelock, the A-Tabbies. He was an excellent athlete, competing in gymnastics, football, basketball, and winning the Ontario Pole Vault Championship at OFSA. He spent his summers teaching swimming lessons in his family pool. And Glenn was an accomplished water skier and ski kite flyer, which I didn't know. And he performed in many shows, including the CNE, Cleveland House, and throughout the USA. And our thoughts were with his family and loved ones. And the second condolences to you, Mayor Burton, and your family on the passing of your father-in-law. Our thoughts are with his daughter, Wendy, your wife, and those of her extended family. Our hearts are with her.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. And I'm sure Wendy will appreciate it too. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. I have a couple things. First of all, as I mentioned at Regional Council earlier today, it was my honor as the chair of the Police Services Board to speak to an impressive group of new constables that were sworn in and received their badges last Wednesday, sorry. I want to congratulate all 23 of those new constables, many of whom will be serving in the town of Oakville and are actually probably on the road this evening. We have a terrific group of the 23, 6 are young women, and there is a very diverse makeup of that group as well. So we're very excited at the Halton Police Services Board and the Halton Police Service to actually be able to celebrate a graduation again, because until recently they've all been virtual. Zoom graduations don't quite have that same appeal. And for your benefit, Your Worship, I made sure that I included Peel Principle number 7 in my remarks. One of the things you asked me to do when I took on responsibility as the chair of the board is to always remember the Peel Principles. So I gave them Peel Principle 7 to keep in mind as they do their daily work. My second item today is really quickly on behalf of the Crime Stoppers of Halton. They're holding a shred event this Saturday, May 28th from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. This is an opportunity to get some of those documents that are kicking around the house that you don't want to get into the hands of others for identity theft, etc. It's a free event, but they are suggesting a donation of $20 per banker's box in order to raise some money for the wonderful programs of Crime Stoppers. And Chair Jan Westcott mentioned to us the other day at the Police Services Board a little secret that I'm about to break. It's no longer a secret, but Domtar has actually donated enough reams of paper, so everybody who comes to get shredding will be given a ream of paper to get started on next year's shredding. So again, it's at police headquarters this Saturday, May 28th, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Bring as much shredding as you've got, and it's all for good cause for Halton Crime Stoppers, one of our favorite charities in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Talk about the circular economy. There's an example. Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that May is also Asian Heritage Month and is an opportunity for us to learn more about the many achievements and contributions of residents of Asian heritage who throughout our history have done so much for our town and region. The theme for Asian Heritage Month 2022 is continuing a legacy of greatness. And of course, this month is a reminder for all to come together to combat anti-Asian racism and discrimination in all forms. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and what a great setup. Today I issued a proclamation extending Asian Heritage Month to Oakville, and declaring that it prevails here and reflects our values too. And there it is. We'll be sharing that. I think I'm actually confident that it's in tonight's Office of Mayor and Council newsletter. Before we move on in the meeting, I think it's tragic that we have to. There's a tragedy that's happened in Texas, and it's so enormous that even though we are in Oakville, the safest community in the world, I can't look away. And I'd like to call for a moment of silence to acknowledge and honor the lives of 19 innocent children and 2 faculty members who were killed in a brutal shooting at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. And the other recent victims of gun violence in the supermarket in Buffalo, New York, and at the church in Laguna Woods, California. Gun madness seems to have seized our neighbors to the south, and I extend our thoughts and prayers to all of those victims and their families and relations and friends, and I pray that our border will keep that madness from spilling up here. And we are lowering our flags for 48 hours to commemorate this. And as I say, it's a painful thing to have to do, and we could wish that we never have to do it again. Thank you, everybody. Now my agenda has, okay, now, the next item is the notice of motion re Kira's law that was put on the order paper at the last council meeting by Councilors O'Meara and Longo, the movers and seconders. Councilor O'Meara has a small edit to add an additional recipient at the end, and that's no problem. Councilor O'Meara and Councilor Longo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I actually have two additions at the end. My apologies, MP Oakville, North Burlington, Pam Demoff, and also the Canadian Judicial Council. I neglected to put MP Pam Demoff in there because she's been spearheading this through so many municipalities across Canada that it's just assumed she knows what's happening here. But that I digress. I'm not going to read the motion. Everybody's got the motion before them. It's a motion very similar to the one we passed at Regional Council. And just for my town colleagues here and for anybody watching. It is shocking to know that some judges and judicial appointees do not get domestic violence training, and they do not get conflict and family training, and when they go through these processes. And in 2020, the most horrible thing could happen to the Kagan family. Little Kira was murdered by her father at the time, and it was over a court case that I think the judge at the time just thought it was two parents bickering and didn't understand a lot of what goes into domestic violence and what goes into sort of coercive control and these sorts of elements. And I think that Jennifer and MP Dillon and MP Demoff are really spearheading this to make sure that there is training, to make sure that judges understand what happens in custody situations, and really in order to protect not just the children in here, but also by and large women in these situations. So I thank council for considering this, and again adding our name to a long list of municipalities that have either passed these resolutions asking the federal government to bring in these seminars and these training sessions, or are in the process of doing that. So I thank you very much for your time and for your consideration. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Councillor O'Meara for bringing this forward, as well as the MPs Dillon and our local MP Pam Demoff. I think it's extremely important, and I think we need to protect those who suffer from domestic violence as well as protecting our children. So I hope that everyone supports this unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. I deeply appreciate the work that you did to add, when we pass this, as I'm sure we will, our name to the list of cities calling for, I'll just extract this from the motion, passage of Member of Parliament Andrew Dillon's Private Members Bill C-233 that will raise the level of education on domestic violence and coercive control for federally appointed judges. These are two crucial elements of how Kira tragically lost her life. May I put the vote? Yes. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Is this a notice of motion being introduced this evening?
Oh, I thought this was introduced. I was All right, I was confused by the regional one, so I thought we'd already done that. So, Councillor Elgar is
Motion to waive
moving.
procedure.
Who spoke?
I was going to say motion to waive procedure so we can vote on it tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Grant is moving and Councillor Elgar is seconding then the motion to waive the procedure to consider this tonight. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's none, it carries. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? If you're in support of the motion, you will answer yes. And if you are opposed, you will say no. And those are the only, we choose those words because they're really easy to distinguish, and yay and nay can get confused. So it's yes or no. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Burton,
Yes.
Councillor Adams,
Yes.
Councillor Chisholm,
Yes.
Councillor Dudek,
Yes.
Councillor Elgar,
Yes.
Councillor Giddings,
Yes.
Councillor Grant,
Yes.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel,
Yes.
Councillor Knoll,
Yes.
Councillor Lischina,
Yes.
Councillor Longo,
Yes.
Councillor O'Meara,
Yes.
Councillor Parmar,
Yes.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, everybody. I declare that carried unanimously. The next item before us is we have 3 requests for reports. Councillor Dudek and Councillor Giddings would like staff to report back on the financial implications of introducing a tax rebate program for Part 4 designated heritage, that is, properties in Oakville, and that this be brought back for council's consideration as part of the 2023 budget process. Councillor Dudek and Councillor Chisholm are also asking for a staff report to provide options for enhanced signage in front of our fire stations to indicate stopping is prohibited for the safe egress of fire vehicles. And Councillor Knoll and Councillor Grant are requesting that staff report back on the feasibility and options for the acquisition, leasing, or other forms of acquisition, or for entering into an agreement with the management of the Sunningdale Tennis Court located at Sunningdale Public School as a town facility from the Halton District School Board, with the goal of keeping it open to the public and repairing and maintaining it in accordance with the standards offered at other town-owned and operated tennis courts. And for your convenience, I'd like to ask for 1 mover and 1 seconder for all 3. Councillor Chisholm, can I recognize you and get a motion out of that, as well as whatever you want to ask or say?
Absolutely. Just one small question.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Lischina, thank you. Councillor Chisholm, you have the floor.
Just for clarity on the report with the Sunningdale tennis courts, does the tennis courts belong to the town, or does it belong to the Halton District School Board? I was a little confused on that. Who owns it?
The tennis courts are owned and on property of the Halton School Board. They no longer have any form of tennis program there, so the community has essentially adopted them, and our parks and open space staff have very kindly annually gone in and put in lines and swept them, but they're not maintained to the standard that our other tennis courts are maintained, and in order to do that, we would actually have to enter some form of agreement, which is what we're asking for.
So I would assume that, Councillor No, through you, Your Worship, Councillor No, I would assume that there's a liability issue and how we deal with that.
That's why, on the advice of Mr. Chris Mark and Colleen Bell, they felt that it was necessary to have some formal understanding, whether we own them, lease them, or simply have some sort of understanding, legal understanding, in order to both maintain the insurance liability issues, as well as, I guess, put them in our inventory formally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor Grant.
And just to further explain, through some strange form of property exchange, we have a park right next door to those tennis courts. So people keep looking to us to maintain them properly, and we keep having to explain that we can't. As people are getting out of their homes and getting more exercise, Councillor Knoll and I have realized the value of at least trying to make sure that we can maintain them in the same way. I mentioned earlier the fact that we've got great town staff guiding us through things, and Parks and Open Spaces, through some work that I and Councillor Knoll have done, have been trying to revitalize a lot of our College Park community areas. And this is one area that we can never touch until we can at least try and get some agreement with the school board. So that's why we're trying to achieve that.
It's good and very timely. I support it. And I recently initiated a regular 3 or 4 times a year meeting of the mayors and the boards and the board chairs and vice chairs of all 4 school boards for the express purpose of looking for opportunities to work together to benefit our mutual residents and students. So this is all good and a very timely move, and I thank both of you for it. So we have a motion moved and seconded by Councillor Chisholm and Councillor Chinna.
Sorry, but all 3 requests for reports already have a mover and seconder. You don't need another.
Pardon?
Don't need another mover and seconder because they all have movers and seconders.
I was trying to call one vote.
I know, but they've been introduced by the.
Fine. All right. On the first one, any objection to the request for report by Councillor Duddick and Giddings on the tax rebate program for Part 4 heritage designated properties? There being none, Madam Clerk, that's carried. Is there any objection to the motion by Councillor Duddick and Councillor Chisholm for the report on enhancing public safety by finding out ways to get people to not park in front of the exit where the fire trucks are supposed to come out at our fire stations? There's no objection, so that's carried. And finally, Councillor Knoll and Councillor Grant are seeking approval for a report on the Sunningdale Tennis Court as we exhaustively went through a second ago. Any objection to that report? Madam Clerk, there is none, and that too is approved. Now, all being well, it would be in order for a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Giddings and Councillor Adams, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection from council, the bylaws are considered and read. And council and public, that finishes the business of this meeting. And it's been terrific working with you. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next meeting.